So the next area that we're going to look at is the skills and capacity of your youth work staff, your volunteers. You may have mentors, you may have in the position of getting support from other organisations that look to support kind of the practical delivery and facilitation of your programs. But those people that you're going to put in place, they need to be trained up just in the same way that you would train up any volunteer or member of staff in a traditional youth club setting, you know, child protection training, how to engage with difficult or confrontational behaviour. So those are the people who are going to be involved in your Makerspace and facilitating programs and activity and engaging with your young people, they're no different. They're going to need a certain basic level of skills and capacities. You can't just let them loose within your Makerspace for the whole obvious reasons that they may not have the technical skills, they may not have a kind of understanding of the level of creativity and innovation that you can really develop out of the equipment, and having a consideration for being an inclusive and diverse in terms of the type of volunteer that you're looking to bring on board and the very specific projects in relation to that, which I'll go into a little bit of depth. So there are about 6 areas that we look at in general when we look at skills and capacities of your staff, your youth workers, volunteers, whoever that might be that's going to be involved. So we've got technical skills, and that's quite obvious. Understanding of hardware, software tools, safety protocols in relation to those hardware tools, and the maintenance procedures. Because one of the things, obviously, is that it's all well and good for young people that you're going to train up, but also the volunteers and everybody else, how to use the equipment. But you want to make sure that they know how to look after that equipment and maintain that equipment, because it can be very costly to the charity or voluntary group to replace a part, or in worst case scenario, the whole piece of equipment. So there are technical skills that you need to teach, and all of these things that I'm going through is a time commitment. So there is a cost that needs to be implicated as part of any kind of funding submission that you're going to do, a time cost for all of these areas. So whatever piece of equipment that you're going to purchase or software platform, you need to set aside a certain proportion of time for the technical skills aspect of the people who are going to be using this as part of their session plans. Again, we've already touched on the pedagogical skills. So we're talking about the skill of experience in teaching and facilitating hands-on project-based learning activities. And that is an entirely different skill from, you know, I'm going to show you how to operate this 3D printer and you're going to create a print. There's a certain level of benefit and experience that the young person will gain from that. But the actual teaching and facilitating of that from an educational point of view is much more enhanced, because you can go into much more in depth in the history of how it came together. So, for example, are you aware that 3D printers of today and within the 21st century are actually based on the Jacquard loom that was built in the 1800s? And the journey and the story of how technology has evolved and developed and how it impacts on your life today. So there's that aspect of it from an educational aspect. You've also got a collaboration skill set that needs to be required. So effective communication, relationship building, and fostering a positive and inclusive learning environment. So within traditional youth work and within community and adult education, you've got to be an effective communicator. And that can be quite challenging at sometimes, because some of the things that you're going to communicate can be quite complex in terms of a coding language, in terms of quite a complex or challenging real life a solution to a problem that you and your group are trying to remedy. And so it's important that you are an effective communicator at all levels, at all ages, based on all kind of levels of educational understanding. And again, youth work is relationship driven at its core. So you need people who are very approachable and open, can have a laugh, but at the same time, makerspaces, unlike a traditional youth workspace, is also akin to a working environment. So there has to be a certain amount of discipline and somebody with strong leadership skills in order to sometimes herd the cats into a bag or herd the sheep into the pen, sort of thing. But I'm sure you understand what I mean by that. And then you want this all to be done in an inclusive learning environment. And again, we've kind of previously touched on that in the last part of the conversation. So in terms of those collaborative skills, you're looking for somebody with the skill set of making sure that whatever the activity that they are going to implement, everybody's involved at an equitable level. So if some people need more support than others in terms of furniture or equipment or space, or a quiet space, for everybody to work on the same project or different areas or parts of a project, you want to have somebody who has the understanding of that in terms of an inclusive environment to work in. You want somebody who is creative and innovative. So basically, we're looking for somebody who has a willingness to experiment with new tools. Again, one of the things that you might find with your current staff or volunteers is that sometimes they may be risk averse, or they might be digitally not very confident in terms of certain platforms or certain things that you would like to introduce or try out. So you're looking for somebody who has a real eagerness and willingness to experiment and try out new different tools, because part of the whole concept within tech startups is about failing fast. It's about trying things out, knowing that not everything is going to work, but you'll still take a piece of learning from that as you go along, and you're refining and developing techniques and approaches to digital making as you fail fast. So you want to, and again, you want to do that and encourage your learners to do that, to take risks and explore their own interests and passions. So an example of that is you get young people who are self-taught how to code, and then you'd shown them a real life example of a way that coding can generate a financial return for them. And there's other kind of examples that we can go into later on as part of that discussion. Problem solving skills. This is a core and key part of any young person that is in terms of an outcome, and particularly in terms of the staff or the volunteers that are going to be facilitating this, is that they have the ability to troubleshoot technical issues, because you are going to have a multitude of technical issues. The more equipment and the more advanced and complex your makerspace becomes, every day you're going to be hit with issues. So you want somebody who can think on their feet, can come up with an alternative use of a piece of equipment or an alternative approach to what your session plan was going to be, but has now been shot out of the water because you've now got a lack of connectivity, or your Wi-Fi or your broadband is now dropped for some reason. So how are you still going to deliver that? So you need somebody who can help learners overcome their challenges and their obstacles in their digital projects. And within that problem-solving skills, you're wanting somebody who can think critically and creatively about their projects and help young people to peer support each other in terms of that critical problem-solving creative approach to working together in that collaborative type of environment. And then the last part is in terms of your recruitment. So you obviously, it's an assumption and it's a given that you're going to be inclusive and as diverse as you possibly can in terms of who you're going to take. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to care where the person comes from or who they are or what faith, religion or race or whatever. As long as they've got the skill set, the willingness and the time to give, you're going to take them. But what I mean specifically about in terms of inclusive and diversity is that if there are specific projects that you are going to run, it's about having people with all the other previous skill sets that I've spoken about, but related to very specific outcomes of particular projects. So, for example, projects that relate to gender. So if you have a project where you want to tackle or approach the lack of diversity of young females within makerspaces or within the tech industry in general, because that's still one of the hot topics. One of the worst things that you could possibly do with that is have that facilitated by men. So take a conscious effort to look for, role model females who have those technical skills or those educational skills, that those problem-solving skills, and it's a female role model who are facilitating those all-female environments to encourage, because that is also giving a message. That's a very important message, that young females who are wanting to operate within a makerspace that can be quite male dominated, as with a lot of youth clubs can sometimes be male dominated in a traditional sense. It's good to have someone who is from that particular background who is going to be teaching within that area. Same thing with like Peter's program that he's going to develop with care experience young people. That's a very specific kind of demographic and a very specific group of young people. So it would be good to have somebody who's also facilitate, if you can, because these we're getting to really real specifics here now, and it's very difficult to try and get those kind of types of people. But if you've got somebody who's from a care experience background themselves, who's also from a makerspace background, then you've hit a trifecta there, because they've got that innate understanding of the audience that they're teaching to, who are also coming through those challenges about employability and accessibility to technology through their care experienced journey. And it's been facilitated by somebody who's came through that as well. The same with if you had somebody who was from, had a challenging educational background or has an additional learning need, and they've been told that, you're going to struggle trying to get a job or go to university and learn, pharmacy, as I know from one person in my life, and they managed to do all of that. And they go back and they go to additional support needs schools as an ambassador to say, look, don't listen to what people are telling you about, you're going to struggle with this and that. Yeah, you're going to have challenges, as everybody does, but it's not an insurmountable mountain that you can't climb. And so that's what I'm talking about in terms of the recruitment of your inclusive and diversity in terms of that, against all those other kind of skill sets.